I was 32 weeks pregnant when I finally believed my life had become everything I had dreamed of. My husband, Daniel, would rest his hand on my growing belly every evening and whisper silly stories to our unborn daughter, convinced she could already recognize his voice. After 5 painful years of infertility treatments, heartbreaking losses, and endless questions from relatives about when we would finally have children, I had learned to treasure every kick, every flutter, and every ordinary moment. I thought the hardest part of my journey was behind me. I couldn't have been more wrong. I grew up in a house where love always came with conditions. My older sister, Victoria, was the family's golden child. She was beautiful, outgoing, and effortlessly charming. If she earned a B in school, my parents praised her for trying her best. If I brought home straight A's, they asked why I hadn't joined more extracurricular activities. If Victoria forgot Mother's Day, she was busy. If I forgot to call on a random Tuesday, I was accused of being selfish. As children, I convinced myself things would change when we became adults. They never did. Victoria married Ethan, a successful real estate developer, at 27. Their wedding looked like something from a magazine. My parents spared no expense and proudly told everyone their eldest daughter was marrying into wealth. I was genuinely happy for her. I even spent months helping her plan every detail, from invitations to flower arrangements. 3 years later, the marriage ended in a bitter divorce after Ethan admitted he had been unfaithful. Victoria returned to our parents' home devastated, angry, and convinced life had cheated her. My parents surrounded her with sympathy, insisting none of it was her fault. Meanwhile, Daniel and I quietly built a modest but happy life together. He taught history at the local high school, and I worked as a pediatric nurse. We weren't rich, but our little home overflowed with laughter, respect, and love. The only thing missing was a child. Month after month, pregnancy tests showed a single heartbreaking line. Every failed attempt chipped away at my hope. Then, one rainy Tuesday morning, everything changed. I stared at the test in disbelief. 2 bright pink lines. My hands trembled so violently that I nearly dropped it into the sink. When Daniel came home that afternoon, I placed the positive test inside a tiny pair of baby shoes I'd secretly bought years earlier, but never had the courage to throw away. He opened the box. His eyes widened. For a full minute, neither of us spoke. Then he wrapped me in the tightest embrace of my life as tears streamed down both our faces. "We're finally going to be parents," he whispered. From that day forward, every doctor appointment felt like another miracle. Hearing our baby's heartbeat, watching her tiny fingers move on the ultrasound screen, and learning we were expecting a little girl filled us with joy I didn't know was possible. At 20 weeks, we decided to tell my parents and Victoria during a family dinner. Daniel squeezed my hand beneath the table. "I have some wonderful news," I announced, smiling. "I'm pregnant." For a brief second, silence filled the room. Then my mother clapped her hands. "Oh, that's nice. Nice. Not congratulations, not excitement. Just nice." My father nodded without looking away from his dinner. Victoria forced a smile that never reached her eyes. "I'm happy for you," she said quietly. But something about her expression unsettled me. It wasn't happiness. It was resentment. The conversation quickly shifted back to Victoria's job search, her divorce settlement, and the expensive vacation she wanted to take to heal emotionally. No one asked about the baby. No one asked how I was feeling. On the drive home, Daniel kept glancing at me. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "They should have celebrated you." I forced a smile. "I'm used to it." He reached across the console and held my hand. "You shouldn't have to be." As my pregnancy progressed, strangers showed me more kindness than my own family ever had. My coworkers organized a baby shower. Our neighbors dropped off homemade meals. Daniel painted the nursery a soft shade of lavender while singing terribly off-key, making me laugh until I cried. My parents rarely called. When they did, every conversation somehow became about Victoria. One afternoon, my mother phoned unexpectedly. "I have exciting news." "What is it?" "Victoria thinks she might be pregnant." I smiled despite everything. "That's wonderful." I knew she'd give us the first grandchild. Her words landed like a punch. I looked down at my visibly pregnant belly. Mom. What? I'm already 7 months pregnant. Oh, well, you know what I mean. No, I replied softly. I really don't. She changed the subject so quickly it was obvious she didn't want to explain herself. Over the next few weeks, my parents became obsessed with Victoria's possible pregnancy. They talked about baby names, nursery ideas, and future family holidays. Then came the shocking truth. Victoria wasn't pregnant. She had never been pregnant. She admitted she had lied because she couldn't stand the attention I was receiving for the first time in my life. I expected my parents to be furious. Instead, they comforted her. My mother hugged her tightly. My poor baby! You must have been hurting so much. Victoria burst into tears. I just couldn't bear everyone talking about Emily's baby. My father turned toward me, his expression hardening. If you'd waited a little longer to start a family, your sister wouldn't have felt so pressured. I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. You think this is my fault? You've always competed with your sister, my mother said sharply. I've spent 5 years praying for this child, I answered, my voice shaking. I didn't get pregnant to hurt anyone. Victoria crossed her arms. I always imagined giving Mom and Dad their first grandchild. I looked at her in disbelief. You don't own motherhood. She stood so abruptly that her chair scraped loudly across the floor. You've always taken everything from me. Taken what? I asked. A husband who loves me? A baby I fought for? I earned neither by hurting you. Instead of calming the situation, my father slammed his fist onto the dining table. Enough! You owe your sister an apology. I slowly pushed back my chair. No. The room fell silent. I've apologized my entire life for existing, I said. I'm done. Daniel immediately stood beside me. We're leaving. As we reached the front door, my mother shouted after us. Don't expect us to celebrate that baby after what you've done to this family. I instinctively placed both hands over my daughter, who responded with a gentle kick beneath my ribs. Daniel opened the car door for me without saying a word. As we drove away, I watched my childhood home disappear in the rearview mirror. For the first time in my life, I wondered whether walking away from my parents wasn't the tragedy. Maybe it was the beginning of our freedom. I had no idea that only 1 week later, they would arrive at my front door, and the nightmare I thought I'd escaped was only just beginning. The week after our disastrous family dinner felt strangely peaceful. My parents never called, and Victoria didn't send her usual passive-aggressive text messages. For the first time in years, silence felt like a blessing instead of a punishment. Daniel hoped the argument had finally forced them to reflect on their behavior. I wasn't so optimistic. People don't spend 30 years choosing one child over another and suddenly change because of a single confrontation. Still, I tried to focus on happier things. Our daughter's nursery was almost finished. Daniel had assembled the white crib after spending an entire Saturday muttering at confusing instruction manuals. Tiny pink blankets were folded neatly inside a dresser, stuffed animals lined the bookshelf, and a delicate wooden mobile hung above the crib, waiting for the day our little girl would finally come home. Every evening, Daniel would kneel beside my belly and tell our daughter about the world waiting for her. I can't promise you'll never get hurt, he whispered one night, but I promise you'll never have to wonder if you're loved. His words made my eyes fill with tears. That simple promise was something I had never received from my own parents. On Friday morning, Daniel kissed my forehead before leaving for work. I'll be back early, he said. Then we'll pick out the stroller. I'll hold you to that. He laughed. You always do. After he left, I spent the morning washing baby clothes and organizing the hospital bag I would soon need. Every tiny sock and miniature sleeper reminded me that our daughter would be here in just a few weeks. Around noon, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. I stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. A few seconds later, another call. Then another. Finally, a text appeared. We need to talk. Open the door when we arrive. My stomach tightened. I hadn't invited anyone. Before I could respond, I heard tires outside. Looking through the living room window, my heart sank. My parents' SUV was parked in front of our house. Victoria climbed out of the passenger seat wearing oversized sunglasses and an expensive white dress, as though she were arriving at a garden party instead of an unwanted confrontation. A knot formed in my chest. I locked the front door. A loud knock echoed through the house. "Emily!" my mother shouted. "Open this door!" I stayed silent. Another knock, this one harder. "Go away!" I called through the door. "We're your family!" "No," I answered. "You're people who happen to share my last name." For several seconds, nothing happened. Then my father spoke. "If you don't open this door, we'll stand here all day." I reached for my phone to call Daniel. Before I could press his name, the knocking became pounding. The front door shook violently. "Stop!" I yelled. The next blow was so powerful that the old lock gave way. The door burst open. My parents and Victoria walked inside without permission. "What are you doing?" I cried. My father slammed the broken door shut behind him. "We're settling this today." I instinctively backed toward the kitchen. "You need to leave." My mother folded her arms. "Not until you fix what you've done." "What I've done?" Victoria removed her sunglasses, revealing red, swollen eyes. "You've ruined my life." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I didn't ruin anything." "You stole my future." "No, Victoria. You stole my first grandchild." I stared at her. "Children aren't trophies." "They are to this family," she screamed. My mother stepped closer. "You've always known how much becoming a mother meant to your sister. It means everything to me, too. You could have waited." The words stunned me. "I struggled with infertility for 5 years." "So did Victoria emotionally," my mother snapped. "That's not the same thing." My father's voice boomed through the room. "You've always thought only about yourself." I felt my daughter's tiny kick against my ribs, almost as if she sensed my fear. I placed both hands protectively over my stomach. "I'm asking one last time. Please leave." Instead, Victoria pointed directly at my belly. "That baby should have been mine first." "No. You don't deserve her." Those words sliced through me. "My daughter isn't yours to judge." Victoria suddenly closed the distance between us. "You've always taken everything." She grabbed my arm. I pulled away immediately. "Don't touch me!" My mother seized my other wrist. "Listen to your sister." I tried to free myself. "You're hurting me." My father stepped in front of the hallway, blocking my escape. Panic flooded every part of my body. There was nowhere to run. I reached into my pocket for my phone. Before I could unlock it, my father slapped it from my hand. The device skidded across the hardwood floor. "No one is leaving until this is settled." My breathing became shallow. "Daniel knows you're here." It was a lie. I hadn't reached him. Victoria laughed bitterly. "He always rescues you." "He loves me." "Because you manipulate everyone." "I manipulate no one." "You manipulated Mom and Dad for years." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "They've chosen you every single time." "They were supposed to choose me now, too." She lunged forward. I stumbled backward. My mother shoved my shoulder. I lost my balance and hit the edge of the dining table before catching myself. A sharp pain shot through my side. I gasped. "Please." "I'm pregnant." My mother showed no concern. "If you'd just apologize." "For what?" "For taking her place." "There is no place to take." Victoria's face twisted with rage. "I wanted to give them the first grandchild." "You don't own my child." She screamed so loudly the windows seemed to shake. "The first grandchild belongs to me." Before I could move, she thrust both hands toward my stomach. Instinctively, I turned sideways and wrapped my arms around my belly to protect my daughter. The impact knocked the air from my lungs. Pain exploded across my abdomen. I cried out and fell to my knees. "No, please." My mother pointed at me instead of helping. "Look what you forced your sister to do." Tears blurred my vision. "I need a doctor." "No," my father barked. "You need to admit you're wrong." Another wave of pain rolled through my stomach. I could barely breathe. I crawled toward my fallen phone. Victoria kicked it farther away. My heart pounded. Not because I feared for myself, because I feared for my baby. Then, the doorbell rang. Every person in the room froze. Once, twice, 3 times. A familiar voice came through the damaged front door. "Emily? It's Mrs. Reynolds from next door. I heard yelling. Is everything okay?" Nobody answered. Another knock, louder this time. "Emily, if you can hear me, say something." My mother whispered harshly, "Stay quiet." Mrs. Reynolds wasn't leaving. She knocked again. "Emily, I'm calling the police if you don't answer." Summoning every ounce of strength I had left, I forced air into my lungs. "Help!" I screamed with everything I had. The room erupted into chaos. My father's eyes widened. Victoria stepped backward. My mother reached toward me as though she could somehow silence what had already happened. Outside, I heard hurried footsteps. Then another familiar voice shouted my name. Daniel. He was home, and everything was about to change. The moment I heard Daniel shouting my name from outside, something inside me refused to give up. I was still on the living room floor, curled around my stomach, trying to protect the tiny life growing inside me. Every breath sent waves of pain through my body, but my daughter's movements were all I could think about. "Please be okay. Please stay with me." Outside, I heard Mrs. Reynolds yelling, "Daniel! They broke the door down! Emily screamed for help!" Daniel's footsteps thundered across the porch. "Emily!" He burst through the damaged doorway. His face drained of color the instant he saw me lying on the floor. His eyes immediately fell on my swollen belly. Then he looked at my parents. Victoria. The broken phone lying across the room. The shattered front door. He didn't need anyone to explain what had happened. He dropped to his knees beside me. "Emily, look at me." I think they hurt the baby," I whispered through sobs. His hands trembled as he gently touched my face. "No, sweetheart. Stay with me." He turned toward the doorway. "Mrs. Reynolds, call 911. "I already did," she answered. "They're 2 minutes away." My father stepped forward, suddenly sounding calm. "Daniel, you're misunderstanding." Daniel slowly stood. I had never seen that expression on my husband's face before. It wasn't rage. It was disappointment so deep that it seemed to erase every ounce of respect he had once held for my parents. "Don't." His voice was quiet. "But don't say another word." Victoria crossed her arms. "She exaggerated everything." Daniel pointed toward the security camera mounted above our garage. "You see that?" Everyone looked. "I installed it 3 weeks ago after someone kept stealing packages." Victoria's face turned pale. "It records everything." Silence. Complete silence. Then distant sirens echoed through the neighborhood. Within minutes, 2 police officers and an ambulance arrived. Paramedics rushed inside. One of them knelt beside me. "My name is Sarah. Can you tell me where you're hurting?" "My stomach." "How many weeks pregnant?" 32. They carefully lifted me onto a stretcher while monitoring my blood pressure and checking the baby's heartbeat with a portable Doppler. Those few seconds felt like years. Then, a rapid heartbeat filled the room. My baby's heartbeat. Strong, steady. I burst into tears. The paramedic smiled gently. "She's fighting." Daniel squeezed my hand. "So are you." As they wheeled me outside, I saw officers separating everyone for questioning. Mrs. Reynolds immediately walked over to them. "I heard screaming from my kitchen," she explained. "Then I heard Emily begging them to leave." Another neighbor approached. "I saw them force the front door open." My parents looked increasingly nervous. Victoria kept insisting it had been a family misunderstanding. No one believed her. At the hospital, doctors rushed me into labor and delivery for emergency monitoring. Every minute felt endless. An ultrasound technician carefully examined our daughter while the obstetrician watched the screen. Finally, the doctor smiled. "Your baby is moving normally." I closed my eyes in relief. There are signs of abdominal trauma and significant stress, but at this point, we don't see evidence of life-threatening injury. Daniel buried his face in his hands and cried. It was the first time I had ever seen him cry without trying to hide it. Several hours later, 2 detectives entered my hospital room. "We're sorry to disturb you," one of them said gently, "but we'd like your statement." I told them everything. My childhood, the favoritism, the fake pregnancy, the confrontation, the forced entry, the assault, every detail. When I finished, one detective opened his notebook. "We've already reviewed part of the security footage from your home." Daniel looked surprised. "So, it recorded everything?" The detective nodded. "The forced entry, the confrontation, the physical assault. There isn't much room for interpretation." The second detective added quietly, "Your neighbor's statement matches the video." For the first time since everything happened, I believed justice might actually exist. The following week, police formally charged Victoria with assault and unlawful entry. My father faced charges related to forcing entry into our home and preventing me from calling for help. My mother was also charged for participating in the unlawful entry and assault. Their attorney attempted to argue they had simply been trying to resolve a family dispute. The prosecutor played the security footage in court. No words could explain away what the camera showed. The judge issued immediate no-contact orders protecting me, Daniel, and our unborn daughter. A few days later, my mother sent me a handwritten letter through her attorney. She claimed everything had happened because emotions had gotten out of control. She asked me to forgive the family. I folded the letter. Without reading another line, I handed it back to my lawyer. I'm done. Months passed. With counseling, physical therapy, and Daniel's unwavering support, I slowly began healing. The nightmares became less frequent. Our daughter continued growing strong. Then, on a crisp autumn morning, labor finally began. 12 hours later, our beautiful baby girl entered the world. The nurse carefully placed her in my arms. She had Daniel's tiny nose, my eyes, and the loudest cry I'd ever heard. "Hello, Grace," I whispered. "You've already taught your mommy how strong she can be." Daniel kissed my forehead. Our little miracle. Word spread through both sides of the family. Several relatives contacted me, apologizing for ignoring years of favoritism. Some admitted they had always known my parents treated Victoria differently, but had been too afraid to speak. I appreciated their honesty. But I had already learned something important. Silence helps the people causing harm, not the people suffering from it. 1 year later, we celebrated Grace's first birthday in our backyard. Pink balloons floated above picnic tables covered with homemade food. Mrs. Reynolds helped Grace smash her birthday cake while laughing harder than anyone else. Watching them together made my heart swell. Daniel wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "You know," he said softly, "if Mrs. Reynolds hadn't knocked on that door..." I looked across the yard at our daughter chasing bubbles. "I know." He squeezed my hand. "She saved all 3 of us." At that moment, the front gate opened. A courier handed me a small envelope. Inside was a single document. The court had finalized every remaining order in our case. The no-contact restrictions would remain in effect for years. Our family was legally protected. I looked at the paper for a long moment before folding it and placing it back inside the envelope. Then I turned toward Grace. She laughed as Daniel lifted her into the air. That sound was all that mattered. I realized something I had spent my entire life searching for. I never needed my parents' approval. I never needed to win their love. The family I had always wanted wasn't the one I was born into. It was the one standing right in front of me. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Grace reached for my face with her tiny hands and smiled. I smiled back through grateful tears. My parents had spent years insisting that the first grandchild belonged to Victoria. In the end, they lost something far greater than an argument. They lost the privilege of ever being grandparents. And as I held my daughter close, surrounded by the people who had chosen love over favoritism, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The doorbell that interrupted the worst day of my life hadn't just brought help. It had opened the door to the future my daughter deserved. A future filled not with fear, jealousy, or conditional love, but with kindness, safety, and the unbreakable bond of a family that truly cherished one another.